CIT 225 chapter number 15 is talking about web application vulnerabilities. Just like network vulnerabilities, it's really important to know the vulnerabilities in the web applications. Since most of the web servers, when they are compromised, the key reason or the main culprit are the poorly written web applications. If they are not following the right practices, people can get control of the web server and then the databases using SQL injection, etc. Objectives of this chapter is to recognize web server vulnerabilities, discuss ways to protect web servers against vulnerabilities, pinpoint web browser vulnerabilities, understand session ID exploits, and then list several protective measures that we can take in order to protect our infrastructure. Now, web application vulnerabilities are internet is a collection of interconnected networks. So traffic would be coming from any direction. It could be from within the network, it could be from outside the network. Users can access many different kind of servers, whether it is web application server, it's an Active Directory, DHCP, DNS, or any other kind of servers that you have within your organization. Most users are not aware of the sort of applications they are contacting. You only know the web interface of an application. You don't know any details about rest of the things, how many applications are running, which application are you using, what other applications are linked to it, etc. The only time the average user is aware of a web server is when he or she sees an error message, which are quite standard, like 400 bad file requests, 401 unauthorized, 403 forbidden, etc. So if you see any of these error messages, they mean something. Now, not always we show the exact meaning of the error messages. Rather, in some cases, it's not recommended to show these kind of error messages on screen if your database is not reachable. It should not tell you completely a full information about it, that why the database is not reachable, because sometimes these kind of error messages, they exposes the path of the database or the database itself which is being used in the back end. Bad file request, failed DNS lookup, host unavailable, etc., or unable to locate the host, etc. Attached to the services include information that has been recorded on websites is vulnerable to duplication. Any data which is displayed on the screen, people are saving the information which displays on the screen, and then on Google servers, if a website is down, you can open a cached website which Google server might have cached on their server, so at least you'll be able to see the information which was there on the website before it went down. FTP users and password can be guessed or hacked, because there is no trial and error or the blocking mechanism on it, that if a user is trying for an X number of times, it would be automatically blocked from accessing those services. Further, they can try different password hacks on it, like dictionary attacks or brute force attacks, etc. Attackers can use the complexity of the site programming to their benefit. Sometimes, if in the browser it's showing you a message, for example, that you are searching for items on a store, it would show a complete path of it on the address bar. Now, if you'll make minor modifications to the message which is appearing on the address bar, you don't need to go to a specific page. Just change the figures or the numbers on the address bar and it would take you to the page where you want to land actually. So that's exposing the overall structure of the database as well as the pages or the kind of information which could be there on the website. Sites can be hacked to insert destination for phishing exploits. If there are any ports open on any of the application or the servers, they can be compromised by sending some rootkits via those open ports, as we have practiced in the lab sessions, and they can be stored on the servers to be exploited later. Now, once those Trojan horses or exploit kits, etc., are installed on the remote server, they can be controlled remotely by the hacker anytime. Whenever the hacker wants to take advantage of the server, he can penetrate in the server using those exploit kits. Intranet can be attacked to glean customer information, because there is a lot of information which is available on the intranet. Intranet is a network which is reachable within the organization only. Now, there are lots of services which are accessible locally, but those services might not be available from the internet, just like payroll services or HR services, etc. They don't need to show all that information about the salary details, etc., online. So usually the server which is serving the web application on which you have all the records related to HR and accounts, etc., is available locally only. It's not accessible from outside. So there is a weaker control from within the organization as compared to from the outside. So customers from within the organization or any contractors who are visiting the organization, if they have access to the network, they might search for the open services on the network, and then they'll try to penetrate in them. Files can be altered or removed. If a file is removed, it can be identified easily. But if a file is changed, it becomes very difficult to search each and every file and then make sure that the files which are there on the machine are the ones which actually were saved by the application or the database. Because if a hacker is constantly changing the data on it, the data which is stored on the databases would be garbage, means it would be useless. The information which would be inside the Excel sheets or inside the databases about the accounts, calculations, etc., would give you 100% different results which were actually meant to be there. That's why they have multiple layers of backups. They are maintaining backups for the databases on daily basis, on weekly basis, and sometimes even on hourly basis. But those backups are then on rotation, that they'll maintain the backup, for example, for 7 days or 30 days, depending what's the storage limit, and then the oldest backup is usually being wiped out with the one which is being constructed right now. Now, internet protocols are essentially insecure. There are secure and unsecure protocols, but it depends how you are programming and how you are having your applications running online. Now, it could be insecure if your web server is still running on port 80. Means that if you are accessing a website on HTTP without HTTPS. HTTPS is a secure protocol for encrypting the communication between you and the content on the website. Speed and transparency are the watchwords of the today's internet at the expense of a better security. So any security mechanism which is fast and reliable plus secure would be adopted, well more appreciated by the guys who are accessing your services through the web. If you are adopting layers of protection and it's delaying the information which is displayed on the screen, people don't like to wait that much, and rather they would go to other websites or applications which are providing better services. Most web users place a great deal of trust in the infrastructure of the internet. Now, in order to gain the confidence of the users, rather than making the pages of the application or throughout the application having a complex security mechanisms, what they do is that they have a very complex login mechanism or authentication, verification, etc., just like multiple factor authentication, MFA by Microsoft, or other services through which once you log in, either you'll receive an SMS on your mobile or an email, or half of the password would be sent through the SMS and half would be sent through the email. or through the application in which there would be certain digits appearing on your mobile phone. You'll have to enter that in order to authenticate yourself. The general public seems to believe they have nothing to steal, so they have nothing to lose either. They think that whatever is on my machine is not important to me, so they put in less efforts in order to protect the data or the information which is there on their computers. Now, it's not only about their data, it's about the overall data of the organization which is saved on those computers. Further, because of the negligence of an individual, if his computer is compromised, he will be the person who will be charged for not paying attention to the security protocols, because if he is not aware and his PC is being used, that's not an excuse. Because usually in the organizations they provide training to the staff, and emails are being circulated from time to time just to let the guys know about the basic security mechanisms or the policies that they must be following. That includes not allowing them to install softwares on their own, not having admin privileges, not allowing them to use USBs on the computers, and stuff like that. Now, weak passwords, users must supply authentication to get on internet at all. Choose the set of strong passwords. As we see that on the network, if you'll allow access by other users to connect their laptops to the network, they might run all different sort of applications, including Kali Linux, to penetrate in the computers or trying to brute force the passwords. Insecure software configuration. Microsoft Server operating systems are shipped using an easy to implement but unsecured configuration, which is a default configuration of the server itself. Now, server operating system is for variety of purposes. As I told you, it could be used for Active Directories, for file servers, DHCP, DNS, web applications, database servers, load balancing, and you name it. So they cannot have a baseline configuration for everyone. It should be your own responsibility to adapt the best usage policies for that specific application. For example, if you are using Active Directory, there are some standard procedures which should be adapted in order to implement a secure Active Directory. If you are following those practices, there are high chances that your applications would be safe. Majority of the network traffic on the web is not encrypted, so there are high chances that it could be intercepted or anyone can get hold of the information which is flowing on the network. Not everyone would be paying attention to the kind of data or the information which flows on the network. Applications used on web servers require very specialized knowledge to configure properly. They are talking about the web servers, whether they are configured for ASP.NET, for PHP, or any other programming language which is being used in developing the applications. Ease of information distribution. Internet is primarily an avenue for distributing information. It could be news websites, blogs, your own Facebook pages, your personal websites, news websites, finance websites, and you name it. There is a plenty of information available on the internet. Novel exploits and newly discovered vulnerabilities are widely known upon disclosure. Now, increasingly sophisticated hacking tools are available which are on the market. Some are there for free, some are there for which you'll have to purchase the licenses, etc. But most of the applications which are available online are enough to help you in penetrating the applications. And innovative methods of attacks that apply to the new features of security systems and software. Tools used to exploit web vulnerabilities include network scanners to scan the open ports and available computers if they are active or alive or not. Then you have password cracking tools to crack the passwords for the applications meant for specific payroll applications, accounting applications, or the operating systems itself, packet sniffers to read the packets, to open them, and to try to understand that what information is being flowed through that. Trojan horses, which can be installed on the computer to gain access remotely. Tools for modifying system log files so that you cannot check in the logs exactly what happened at what time. And then tools for automatically modifying the system configuration files so that next time if the hacker would try to penetrate in the system, it won't notify the administrators that something's going on. Now, access increasing, and ever increasing number of people are accessing the internet every year. You'll see that every new year there are new devices. Like before, there were only computers. Then we had the computers and tablets and laptops. Then you have smartwatches, and now we are living in the age of IoT, Internet of Things, or Internet of Everything. So every other device is going on to the internet, which wasn't predicted when they started the internet. Fast access through the cable, DSL, or fiber is increasing on the daily basis. There are lots of applications which requires access by the government or by the local authorities or by your organization, including sales, etc., that wherever the persons would be roaming around at the headquarters, they'll have exact information that where the trucks are being moved and if they are parked or they are on the run on the highways. Now, brings an increased number of people with access to and interest in the internet for criminal activities, etc. Means there are good guys and there are bad guys. Some people would be there who will be using it for the benefit of their business and themselves, whereas others would be looking for any weaknesses in the applications, etc., to bring down the services or to exploit the vulnerabilities which are being identified on the applications. Some of the most important web server vulnerabilities are insecure network. If your network is insecure, where there are open ports, there is no control on virtual LANs, you don't have any access control list, there is no administration of it, there is no one monitoring that where is the traffic flowing, and if the traffic is being encrypted before it travels on the network. Unsecured hardwares, if you have servers lying in the public domains, anyone can gain access to them and would try to compromise the data which is being saved or sent to the servers. Now, threat from insiders, the people who are working within an organization, maybe the guys through a contractor or people who are openly coming in and leaving the organization. Weakness in the site administration tools, the tools that you use in order to monitor the network. Weakness in application or protocol design. When you are designing an application, there is a standard way or procedures to develop the application, so the programmers will have to follow certain rules and regulations before they'll develop an application. So once an application is developed, is not developed on the live servers. It's always developed in the local in-house servers. It's being tested on the local servers, and then there is a team for testing and evaluation, etc. Once it passes through that for quality assurance, etc., only then the application would move to the production servers. So that before it moves to the production servers, if there are any weaknesses in the applications, they should be highlighted and must be removed so that they can avoid any kind of problems later. Weaknesses in operating system software. It's the responsibility of the infrastructure guys to make sure that all servers or applications that they are using are properly patched. Usually the operating systems are patched because Microsoft is constantly sending the updates for that. But if you are using any specific accounting or payroll application, make sure that you are applying any latest patches which are being released by those vendors. Now, insecure network is when the network of an organization is not secure. No data transmission over the internet or local area network is secure. So any information which is flowing on the network is highly likely to be captured and could be read. Just like if they are still using a telnet protocol in order to authenticate the services, you know that the packets can be captured on the internet, on the network, on a LAN, and it could be read that what was the username and password which was supplied on that. Secondly, just like telnet, if you are using a web server without HTTPS, and if a user is trying to authenticate on the network on a locally hosted website, if he is passing a username and password, those packets can be captured as well, and people would lose their username and passwords. Users who have access to the network can intercept messages over the network with the use of packet sniffers. Unsecured hardware is if a web server hardware is not securely protected from unauthorized physical access. No amount of software security can protect that from the server's data. Just like if we are putting the student registration server in registration office where students are going on daily basis, they know that that's the server lying over there, and that's the prime target. It's just like payroll application or accounting application servers available openly with an access where anyone can gain access to the machines. Threats from the insiders. Most effective computer crime originates within the organizations targeted. Motives include boredom, people have nothing to do, idle curiosity, just sitting idle and you have nothing else to do, so they'll keep on searching that what is being saved on the servers. The challenge, okay, I'll challenge myself to find the vulnerabilities of the system and I'll try to penetrate in the system. Or a revenge, maybe the employee didn't get the pay raise as the rest of the employees, so just to have a revenge they'll be trying to attack the applications or the web servers running within the organization, or for a financial reward. Maybe the competitor would pay them that, okay, we'll pay you for certain things, you sit in your organization, provide us this information, copy these files on the network so that someone else from the outside network can easily gain access. Weakness to site administration tools. Like websites are designed to be dynamic, not static, because the static content can be copied easily. Dynamic nature is if your website is trying to get the information from the database, there is an authentication and secure mechanism of getting the data from the database. Means there would be username and passwords, etc. But if the data is stored on the pages itself, they can be easily copied from there. If the data is coming from the database and it's being changed on daily basis as far as the statistics and numbers are concerned, so that's a dynamic nature of the content. A server upon which websites are hosted is regularly monitored, like who's accessing it, from where they are accessing it, and which are the pages which are mostly accessed. If you administer your server locally, it is simple to keep an administration tool secure, with the help of which they'll keep an eye on it. The easier you make it for authorized users to access their sites, the easier it becomes for unauthorized users to access pieces of web server. So they'll not be able to get the basic information about the applications. Whenever we are doing network security or penetration testing, we segregate the traffic based on the applications. For example, whatever you are running, web applications, web servers, network protocols, security, access points, wireless access points, then you have student labs and all those different things. So the days are divided amongst all these different applications to test them specifically, individually, making sure that they are secure and there are no weaknesses in the overall configuration or the design of deployment of those applications. Now, weaknesses in the applications or protocol design at the time the software is designed, security is often not the highest priority, because either you'll hire a fresh graduate to develop some applications for you, or you'll buy it from a company. Mostly the companies which are selling their products online or on the internet, etc., they have a baseline configuration or security protocols much more secure as compared to the applications which are developed in-house. Now, if the applications are developed in-house and you are hiring someone, you'll have to see that for how many years the person has been designing the applications, or if they are hosted on any websites. If you are hiring a person who's quite new, maybe they might not have a great exposure on securing the applications or using the right protocols in order to protect the application and the data which is stored on those applications. This strategy typically produces software that presents unexpected vulnerabilities. It could expose the data structure or the database structure, or it would give you some insights about the data which is saved, or the people would be able to gain access through the web server, and once the web server is compromised, they can then penetrate to the other servers or the web applications which are hosted on the same server. If a protocol has fundamental design flaw, then the vulnerability to various exploits essentially is forever, unless and until if you'll check it, and if you'll not check it, they'll remain on the machines, and the person, whoever has access to those servers, he'll keep on accessing the services which are stored on it. Weaknesses in the system software are all operating system software has vulnerabilities, and then they are patched with the passage of time. Now, as we discussed earlier, that there are guys who are constantly looking for vulnerabilities in the systems. So if a vulnerability is patched by Microsoft by releasing an update patch for that specific vulnerability, maybe next month or next week someone would find out another vulnerability which might compromise an application or the operating system itself. System software is very complicated and intended to supply the base for all subsequent application layer and presentation layer software. System software is foundation upon which the software is laid. You have an operating system, you want to run a database application on it, you'll install MySQL Server or SQL Server on that operating system to run the database applications within your network. The same issues of security as an afterthought apply to the system software as do for the application software. As you can see in this picture, we have OS kernel in the middle, which is the core of the operating system, contains the hardware drivers and methods of accessing all hardware, including the CPU, hard drive, RAM, etc., and external drives. Then we have an application that runs on top of the operating system, and then we have user interfaces, both command line and graphical user interface. So these are the three layers of a computer architecture. Now, coding vulnerabilities are API abuse, which is a code written in order to fetch some information from the system's application programming interface. And then we have access control vulnerability, who has access to the system's authentication vulnerability, if the user is authorized to use that system or not. Code permission vulnerability, who has the access to the code. Then code quality vulnerability, if it is poorly programmed. Cryptographic vulnerability means any encryption mechanisms, if they were enforced or not. Environmental vulnerabilities, if it is properly secured or not. Error handling, that if an error is shown in result of a query which is being passed on the machine, whether it's displayed to the user and user or not, or it's showing you a code which only you understand. General logic error, how it's displayed or handled, or input validation vulnerabilities to stop the SQL injections that you must not be able to provide certain parameters in the text fields in order to get the deep down details about the database or the username and passwords. Improper web server access configuration, administrative privileges, default user accounts, or misconfigured file permissions leads to the system vulnerabilities as well, because if there are default accounts on the computer, maybe the users will not have access to change the files, but they might be able to see the files which are saved on those systems. So that's why all those default accounts, default names which are used for vendor specific applications must be changed or removed so that the other users cannot gain access to those things. Now the protection against web application vulnerabilities is, this section describes the protection methods, for example the physical server, the network architecture, operating system on that server, and the web applications. Now when we are talking about securing the operating system and the web server, place your web server in a demilitarized zone. Demilitarized zone is a neutral zone between the private LAN and the public network of an organization. So it's not in your LAN, it is outside the LAN and public network of an organization, so that even if it's compromised, it's not affecting directly the LAN infrastructure. Designed to prevent external users from gaining direct access to the internal servers. Your internal servers are meant to be accessible from within the network only. External servers are the ones which should be very secure, because they will be the edge servers on which the public from outside would be accessing in order to gain some information. Protect LAN from possibility that your web server will be hacked by some insider or some outsider. So the server which is in DMZ, the internal users must have permissions to access that server and then to make the changes in it. Further, the public which is coming from outside, they must not be able to access any services through that server which are running within the organization. Security measures to check for all default configurations in the operating system and the web server. If there are any default configuration or open ports which you are not using, it's recommended to close them, because they can be a gateway to any kind of penetration from outside. Dump any default user profiles. If you see in your user accounts you have any profiles which were created for any guys who logged into those servers and they don't exist anymore, try to get rid of those profiles. Shut down or even uninstall any services that server does not need and they are still running. You have installed a web server, some things would be installed by default as a baseline configuration, but if you're not using those applications, it's recommended to get rid of those services. Modify user groups to guarantee that authorized users have only as much access as they require. So give access to a group of users or a user on a group, and then remove his permission or her permission if they are no longer working there. Shut down Telnet or any anonymous FTP servers which are working on that server, or if you want to use those services, move to the secure protocols. Now use encrypted services like Secure Shell, SSH, and authenticated FTP or secure FTP. Set your network firewalls to ignore HTTP connections to all ports except the HTTP and HTTPS ports, and automate the OS patch updates so that the patches are installed as soon as they are available. And they are usually being done by Microsoft SCCM server or Microsoft Windows Service Update Server, which is connected to Microsoft, and it downloads all the latest patches and updates, and then it keeps on patching the computers on the network. Since people are using mobile phones, they are using tablets, they are using laptops and desktop computers. So maybe once the patch was rolled out, the user was not available or was not in the office. As soon as the user would connect his or her laptop or a machine to the network, the Windows Update Server would push the latest updates to that specific machine. We'll stop it over here and we'll continue the lecture in our next session.